You are listening to the SDSU podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your host, Andre Hagverdian. Welcome, listeners, back to another episode of the SDSU podcast. We are almost at the holiday period of Christmas and New Year's. It's been a few weeks since we've had an episode. This one's going to be a solo one for myself. Kind of recapping the San Diego State football news cycle from the last couple weeks. Obviously, since the New Mexico game, since the Aztecs were not selected, if you want to say, to play in the championship game by the computer rankings and metrics. A lot has happened, I guess, in from the news cycle, not necessarily on the field. Um, so I wanted to kind of recap that, talk about potentially what, the returners could be coming back for next year based on, who's graduating, who's got eligibility, things like that. Obviously, the Aztecs play the New Mexico Bowl this coming Saturday, the 27th, against North Texas in Albuquerque. For anyone going out there for that one, hopefully you have some safe travels and stay warm over in Albuquerque. I would say the biggest news, I would say the biggest news coming out of San Diego State in the last couple of weeks is the defensive coordinator change. Obviously, Rob Arich was poached by a power conference team, Nebraska in the Big Ten, to be their defensive coordinator. It was a deserving um, hire or promotion, you could say, for Rob Arich. Obviously, going from defensive coordinator from a Group of Five school to a Power Four school comes with definitely a monetary adjustment. He signed a 3-year deal, so that gives him a little bit of protection in case there's a coaching change. Matt Rule has been at Nebraska for several years. I don't know how many more years he's got to turn that around, but he's hoping that Rob Arich could work his magic that he did at San Diego State. I think it's the reason why I think it's deserving is because not only did Rob Arich coordinate in his 1 year at San Diego State a top 10 defense in the country, but I think it was how bad they were last year and how much they improved with essentially the same defensive roster. They obviously added a couple guys that fit starting roles and played some good depth, but the majority of the players did come back. So it was really the same defense. And Rob Arich was able to turn them into, I think they were in the 90s or hundreds, bottom third of the country in rankings, and a lot of the rankings to basically top 10, and a lot of the rankings top 15. And I think that's uh, what he did. Also, what he did with Trey White as his position coach 2 years ago or last year, turning him into an all-conference player. Um, I think he had 12 and a half sacks. And then what he did with Owen Chambliss this year, turning him into an all-conference first teamer as a linebacker, because that's what his position coach was as well as defensive coordinator. I think, jumps off the page why he was a Broyles award candidate for the best assistant coach in the country. So obviously we wish Rob the best. He was didn't get a ton of opportunity speaking to him. I can remember one during fall camp, uh, and coming away impressed by hearing him speak and answering questions and things like that. Roy Manning, who was the edges coaches this year, he replaced Rob Arich as the edge coach this year. Um, Also left, went to Nebraska to be the head coach there. Not surprising that Rob Arich would take somebody with him. Manning has a lot of Power Four experience as a position coach. Before San Diego State, he was at USC. He's been kind of a few different high-level spots as well. Originally you could look at him being a replacement for Arich at defensive coordinator at San Diego State because of his power conference experience, although he had never been a defensive coordinator. But he chose to go with Rob Arich, and we wish him the best as well. Um, Initially, Sean Lewis promoted Demetrius Sumler to an interim DC for the bowl game. Um, I don't think that was a surprise because obviously they still had a game to play and they needed a defensive coordinator. A lot of fans wanted Demetrius Sumler to be the guy because of his history at San Diego State, what he's done, a local guy, what he's done with the cornerbacks. He had a few NFL cornerbacks several years ago that made it to the league. Then he had obviously Chris Johnson, who is projected to be a day two pick, round two or three in the NFL draft coming up. Um, and then, before even the bowl game happened, he was named the permanent defensive coordinator. I don't know how in depth the hiring process went and the candidate search and the interviews. A lot of that was kept hush hush, but not surprising after how Sean Lewis spoke about Demetrius Sumler at the press conference when he announced him as the interim about how this was his great opportunity to showcase what he could do, with the transfer portal opening, shortly after their game against in the Mexico Bowl. I think and there are, no no surprise that teams and players are talking right now, even though the portal is not open. And so I think, especially if you're recruiting guys on the defensive end, which they need to, and we can talk about what positions those could be a little later. They defensive players want to know who their defensive coordinator is going to be and who's their position coach going to be. And so I think it was probably a smart decision to make that permanent. The Demetrius is going to have to fill obviously the edge coach and the linebacker coach position, and then we'll see what he does with the cornerbacks coach position. Obviously, that's where he's made his bread and butter, but that could be a position that's might be too much for someone as a defensive coordinator to also hold. The last three defensive coordinators for San Diego State were the linebackers coaches as well, and maybe the staff typically feels like linebacker coach could be something that the defensive coordinator can handle because the linebacker is the quarterback per se of the defense on the field, an extension of the coordinator and the play calling, and it makes sense for that person to be also coaching linebackers. It may feel like the linebackers need maybe less day-to-day instruction or one-on-one instruction. I don't know for that for sure, but there's a reason why the last three defensive coordinators and a lot of defensive coordinators will coach linebackers in addition to being a coordinator. So it'll be interesting if Sumler will keep the cornerbacks role or if he'll switch. So then they'll need to bring somebody in there. So we'll probably get to figure that out in the next week or so. But yeah, they're going to need to hire the edge coaches and a linebackers coach at the very least. That's two assistant coaches that are needing to be hired while we figure out what happens to the cornerbacks coach. There's a great opportunity. I mean, Demetrius Sumler has been at San Diego State for now 10 years as a assistant and then as a cornerbacks coach. So he's learned under Rocky Long, Brady Hoke, Kurt Maddox, Rob Arich, a lot of guys next to him as position coaches as well. So this is his opportunity to show what he can do, and we look forward to seeing him in that role. A lot of chatter before the end of the season about Sean Lewis maybe being poached after a great season this year. There was some smoke about UCLA. UCLA ended up hiring the James Madison coach, Chesney. Who knows if Sean Lewis was, in the mix or next up if Chesney decided to stay or got another position elsewhere. But not a lot of talks about Sean Lewis, or at least rumors, anywhere else. A lot of the coaching positions seem to be stabilizing for now. That may change when the NFL season ends in 2 weeks because you could see a domino effect where NFL coaches get fired and maybe want to some college programs want to hire them and they can move on from their head coaches, or you could see current college football head coaches get hired as new NFL head coaches, and that could open up spots. So there's still a lot to possibly play out domino wise, but right now it seems pretty stable and comfortable enough where you can say Sean Lewis will be the coach at San Diego State next year, but we'll see about that. Player wise, I mean, Chris Johnson, his accolades keep rolling in. He got some All-American nods, first team, second teams. I think, AP was second team, PFF second team. So yeah, he just a remarkable year for him, and the fact that he's gotten this national recognition by a lot of the NFL draft experts from ESPN, from The Athletic, Dane Brugler, Jordan Reed, those guys who talking about him potentially being, you know, end of first round pick. I think the tape will be the tape for him. I think the season that he had on tape will help boost his stock and has already. But I think notes and comments and mock drafts in November and December don't really mean anything. I think the Senior Bowl next month that he's going to be at working out with, you know, um, other cornerbacks across the country, including Power Four cornerbacks, going up against wide receivers, Power Four wide receivers, one on one. I think that's going to show a lot. Pro Day, obviously, that's probably going to come up in March some point. It's going to be a big deal, and then the combine. Where is he going to run in the 40, the shuttle drills? How is he going to do in one-on-one workouts? I think ultimately that's going to set his stock up for where he gets drafted. Um, I'd like to think that a day two pick is probably very reasonable, but we'll see. I mean, how he runs in the 40 and some of that stuff could propel him to a first round or could drop him down a couple rounds. It's hard to say. I've seen mock drafts in the years past in November and December where they have some guys going top five and then they go undrafted. Whether that's for whatever reason, injuries, poor workouts, off-field stuff. So I mean, I think there's still a lot between now and the draft in April to really know for sure where someone's going to get drafted unless they're, obviously, um, top, quarterback that's like a, blue chip, no issues, no miss or anything like that. So we'll see, but I think Chris Johnson definitely has a bright future in the NFL wherever he ends up getting drafted. Um, in addition, I don't know if there's any other players on this year's roster that are going to get drafted. Just think Ross Ulugalu Masuli. I mean, I think he's got a chance because of what he did as a center. Christian Jones came on. I don't know if that's he's looking for potentially a roster invite post draft. You get Eric Butler, who I think has a shot depending on his workouts as well, playing a safety role in the NFL. Um, that may be it. I mean, I think Gabriel Placencia had a great year, had a great career these last 2 years, setting records with consecutive makes and I think his field goal percentage makes is also was a record at some point. So he could have a chance. Um, but yeah, I don't see a ton of other guys right now anyway that are on that radar, but a lot can change. Um, we mentioned the New Mexico Bowl. It's coming up Saturday, 2:45 p.m. Pacific time. They're playing North Texas. North Texas's head coach is gone. They have an interim head coach. Their quarterback is rumored to be entering the transfer portal. Um, but they're saying that he may still play. I think that to me, there's no way he's playing in this game. Drew Mestamaker, um, he's going to be a coveted transfer portal quarterback for what he did this season in that offense. So I just don't see any. I would put it at less than 2% that he plays, and it's probably even zero. Honestly, no matter what they're saying right now. Um, it just doesn't make any sense why he would play, especially with his head coach already gone. Um, For San Diego State, it looks like Bryce Phillips is the only one that has officially, or at least by not being at practice, and by Sean Lewis's statements that he will not be playing the bowl game. He's opting out. Chris Johnson is, I guess, is still up in the air. Sean Lewis talked about trying to get healthy from the injury he had in the season that caused him to miss the Hawaii game and kind of battle it out through the rest of the season. Honestly, I don't think he will play either. I don't think he should play. I just don't know what benefit it gives him, especially if he is injured or battling something. There's no benefit to playing this game other than him just wanting to have one other game with his teammates. Um, but I guess the down, what we just talked about, what he has to focus on with workouts and Senior Bowl and uh, combine stuff, I think. There's too much risk to playing in this game, in my opinion. Now, if Chris wants to play, he should play. But I could see more reasons than not that he will opt out or not play. Maybe he'll dress and play one series. I don't know, but if it was up to me, he probably shouldn't play. Um, no other guys I think have potentially, other than the guys who have transferred out. Um, I think Jared Beatty and August Salvati, they announced that they would be transferring out about a week or two ago. They're no longer on the roster anyway, so it's not an opt-out for them because they're technically not on the roster anymore and they're moving on. JP Mielowski just announced the transfer yesterday. So yeah, I doubt he is going to be playing in this one. He probably wasn't even going to um, uh, play in the game, get on the field, meaning. So yeah, with Jaden Denegal having surgery and being out, Sean Lewis said Bert Emanuel would be starting in this one. Bert Emanuel in his limited, it's probably unfair to say this, but in his limited opportunities this year did not look good at quarterback. He struggled in the option game. Struggled throwing the ball. His ball did not look good. Getting the ball downfield, we didn't see really any of that. As I said, it's a little unfair because he usually when he came in, it was in the middle of the game. Well, it was always in the middle of the game. Kind of want to, maybe Jaden Denegal got hit, helmet came off, had to come out for a series. Um, and so there's a lot of that like jumping in the fire and maybe not being kind of ready. But now he's got 2 weeks to prepare to be a starter. Um, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do in that sense. I mean, last year playing against him, the Aztecs playing against him at Central Michigan, he looked faster, he looked more athletic. Um, this year he didn't seem to have that, and maybe it was because he was prepping to be a quarterback and he's getting stronger and bigger and he lost some of that. Maybe we just didn't get to see it from the play calling. But I think it'll be interesting to see what he does in this game. Um, North Texas has a really bad rush defense. Lucky Sutton obviously would be playing, and hopefully they can get that going. But in terms of the passing game that already was struggling with Jaden Donegal in there, not having him, obviously still not having Jordan Napier and Jacob Bostic, I think it's going to be a real struggle for the Aztecs to score any points in this game. Barring turnovers or field position that's really beneficial. So we'll see what happens there. I'll have a preview article out later this week on that game, and then I will have obviously the recap. We do have a photographer that is traveling to Albuquerque, PJ. Vanilla Gorilla Photography on social media if you're more familiar with that handle. So he'll be on the field taking photos for us. So look forward to his work there. And then obviously the transfer portal opens up January 2nd, so it'll be a quick. end of season, end of game recap for San Diego State until they kind of move on to um, what the transfer portal brings. And that's kind of what the last, I want to spend most of this episode talking about. Every year we know with how the college football landscape is that you have basically a brand new roster every year. And Aztecs actually were fortunate last year on the defensive side that they returned a lot of their guys. A lot of the guys they wanted to come back came back. And that's I would say that's not usual or typical of how this is. And interestingly enough, I could see a little bit of a flip this year where a lot of the offensive guys have a lot of eligibility who will come back, while you might see a lot more changes on the defensive side. And I think that's just because of who you're losing in terms of graduation, who you may lose in the transfer portal, and who you want to come back comes back. So it's gonna be interesting because Sean Lewis, they had to turn around from 3-9 to 9-3, maybe 10-3, maybe 9-4 based on the bowl game, but um, they didn't win because of Sean Lewis's offense. I mean, that's that's a fact. They won with defense, special teams, and then the running game with Lucky Sutton obviously helped with some of that. But the offense was, bottom third of the country in almost a lot of the statistics, while the defense was top 10. And their special teams units were highly regarded. I think their ESPN um, special teams index, I want to say they were top 10 in that as well. Um, Similar to a few years ago, I think it was a 2021 season where they won 12 games, where their special teams and defense were, you know, historically good and their offense was pretty bad. And so, very similar year to that, except they didn't finish off the season with their last win, didn't get to play in the conference championship game. But it was kind of a lot of similarities in that season versus this season. But just the final game of the season against New Mexico could have made it much more similar to that. But if you look at quarterback, we just kind of talked about JP Mielowski transferred out, true freshman who redshirted this year. Jaden Denegal, he obviously had shoulder surgery on his non-throwing shoulder as a second year in a row. Sean Lewis's starting quarterback suffered a non-throwing shoulder injury during the season, kept playing, finished out the season, and then had surgery off-season. Danny O'Neill obviously ended up transferring out despite the surgery. Jaden Denegal looks to be staying based on what Sean Lewis said. Hopes to have him back for spring camp, but it's going to kind of depend on what how his rehab goes. A shoulder injury, especially to your non-throwing hand, non-throwing shoulder, um, is probably easier to come back from than like a torn ACL or a torn knee ligament surgery because of the rehab. But every player is different, so you don't know. Um, We talked about Bert Emanuel Jr. He'll get his shot at the New Mexico Bowl, but I think based on how the season went, I don't know if the staff has the confidence in him to compete for a starting job next year. I don't know whether he'll still be here in the spring. He may want to transfer out and go look to be a quarterback somewhere else. That was his main reason for coming to San Diego State, because they recruited him to compete at quarterback. Um, I don't think he's going to be in the quarterback competition. He probably shouldn't be, if we're being honest. So I don't know where that's going to lead. Now, we'll see how he does in the New Mexico Bowl, but I don't know if that's going to necessarily change people's minds. Kyle Crum has been here now for 4 years. He really hasn't played since, his first action against Boise as a true freshman, and after he broke his collarbone, hasn't really played since then. I think he had um, one snap against Washington State and one or two snaps against San Jose State. It was really just to hand off. He hasn't thrown a pass in 3 years. At this point, if he's hasn't gotten a shot in Sean Lewis's offense for 2 years, despite the injuries to the starters, despite the backups maybe not being um, not having the staff's confidence, then just don't think it's meant to be for him under Sean Lewis's offense. Um, he did not. I was surprised. I thought he is a redshirt junior, so he's technically a senior academically. I did think that maybe he would graduate, partake in senior night festivities, and then maybe try to transfer for his one last year at a lower level and try to play somewhere. Um, I don't know if he's going to transfer out. But at this point, you're looking at a quarterback room where you really have one guy who could compete to be the starting quarterback, and he's going to be coming off of off-season surgery, and who knows how limited he will be in the spring. So if we're talking needs, I think they need to go get a quarterback in the transfer portal. They do have Brady Campbell coming in, who's a quarterback from high school. I can't imagine that he will be in the mix for a starting quarterback job next year. Could be is more of a developmental guy. Drayden Trudeau, who's a walk-on this year, I don't see him having much of a a spot to compete. So they're going to need somebody from the portal, experienced, preferably that can compete with Janie Denegal um, for that starting position because Denegal had flashes. You can always go back to that Nevada game, the Colorado State game, Cal game, and say, well, this is what he can do. And if he stays healthy, he can do that 12 games a year. But he also had some bad games, even before the injury. Um, and even with the injury, he there was a lot of things that he just did not improve on in terms of not just making the throws, but the decision making, things like that. So this is tough. This is a tough way because that Sean Lewis wants to be loyal to his guy, Jaden Donegal, but I think they have to get a quarterback in the portal that can come in the spring and can compete because otherwise, I think they're going to be in big trouble next year. Running back, Lucky Sutton announced yesterday he's coming back. I think I mean, that makes them set at that position, assuming Christian Washington also comes back. Um, Byron Caldwell Jr., he's an interesting one. He's listed as a senior, but if you look at, he did have 2 years at Cal where he didn't play. One of them was due to an injury. It is possible he can get a medical red shirt and have one more year left. He did not partake in senior night festivities, and that could be a result of he already had one at Cal and didn't want to do it again. Could be a result of he wasn't sure whether he would get his red shirt or he knows he was already coming back. So I think if you got Sutton, Washington, and Caldwell coming back, you're pretty much set at that position when it comes to transfer portal, in my opinion. You've still got Sincere Rainey and Jordan Thomas. Unfortunately, Rainey's first 2 years have been marred by injuries. Um, we don't know where the staff feels with him. And then when you've got Lucky Sutton and Washington and possibly Caldwell coming back, I could see this as an opportunity where Rainey or even Jordan Thomas look to move on and try to get playing time somewhere else. Um, Otherwise, I think you're pretty much set at this position, which is a positive thing because the running backs were, the best part of the skill positions this year. No, no doubt about that. Wide receiver is where it gets interesting. The three top wide receivers statistically were Donovan Brown, Jordan Napier, Jacob Bostic. Bostic and Napier obviously had injuries, missed their, final games of the season. Donovan Brown was kind of that deep threat guy. He was the guy catching those 40, 50-yard plays from Jaden Denegal, which were big plays, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards. But, Donovan Brown technically really didn't do much else other than those deep plays. He was not very good short, dropped some passes over the middle. Didn't really connect with Donegal. Donegal would overthrow him or underthrow him, throw behind him. They just didn't have a good connection there. Um, Assuming Jordan Napier, Jacob Bostic return and don't transfer and are healthy, you have Donovan Brown back. I think you've got a good unit there. Um, Jordan Napier obviously entered the transfer portal last year, was not happy with uh, the offers or the pursuits he was getting and decided to come back after a really productive year before the injury. I don't know now if his pursuit, people are coming after him a little harder and maybe what he wanted last year, and he's looking to leave now. But with how productive he was this year and coming off an injury, you would think that I think, feels better about the situation here at San Diego State, but we'll have to see there. Um, Mikey Welsh, Nathan Acevedo, got a lot of playing time after Bostic and Napier's injuries. Not sure those guys are irreplaceable or needle movers necessarily. Miles Kip Denton, we didn't see much of him at all on the field after I think he had an 86-yard touchdown at the fall scrimmage, and then we didn't really see him. And then he was battling injury at the end of the season. I don't know if he's coming back. Jalen Hawkins kind of stepped up that last couple games of the season after Napier got hurt and was basically the Napier replacement in the offense in terms of taking the jet sweeps, taking the screens, taking the short stuff. And I think there's a lot of promise with him next year, whether Jordan Napier is back or not. And then I don't, Jerry McClure and Wilsey and Freeney, I don't know what happens with those guys. They obviously were not in the favors of the coaching staff, I would say, this season. Considering the injuries and considering who moved ahead of them uh, at the positions that they were at to get playing time at the end of the season, even after the injuries. So I don't know what happens with those guys. They clearly were not showing something in practice during the season that made them fall behind some of these other younger guys. Um, and I don't know where their spots on this roster are moving forward. It's a shame because McClure is a San Diego guy, played at Mater Dei. Will Freeney would play at Carlsbad for 1 year, um, with obviously Julian Sane, but we'll see what these guys do. But I think the wide receiver position is a little bit up in the air because of those injuries and how they bounce back. But I think there's enough talent there where if everyone does come back, that they should be okay. Doesn't mean they can't add more talent at the position. Having a possession guy, a guy who can catch those slants over the middle, I would say is probably how they can improve that unit. Someone that Donegal or whoever the quarterback is trusts on those third and short plays to throw you know, those slants or posts or something that should be an easy pitch and catch for most quarterbacks and wide receivers that San Diego State just has seemed to have trouble with for so many years now. But um, that's really, I think, having a possession guy that can go over the middle and make the big plays. I think, or at least the first down, the chain moving plays. I think it could be where they have the most help. Tight end. Seth Adams was the number one tight end. He was more of a blocking tight end. He's moving on, obviously, out of eligibility. Jackson Ford was kind of the guy who got most of the passing, most of the targets, although he was not very productive. The tight ends just were not much of the passing offense this year that they were last year with Jude Wolfe and Mikey Harrison. But those guys were fifth year, sixth year seniors who had played a lot of football and had some production, either as starting blocking tight ends or receiving tight ends. So Jackson Ford is a guy there. Arthur Ban, Ryan Wolfer. Um, they got very limited playing time, didn't get a lot of targets. I don't know what happens there if that improves. Jacob Alvarez was a redshirt freshman this year, or he's a true freshman this year that redshirted. Can he make a splash? I would expect, as we've seen from the first 2 years of Sean Lewis, that they go after a senior blocking tight end like a Seth Adams, like a Jude Wolfe, to kind of be their starter this year because it seems like that's what they like to do in this offense. They're using their tight end more as a kind of a sixth offensive lineman, and I don't think that player exists on the team right now. And so I think you could see them go after a senior, experienced blocking tight end. Offensive line. This is the unit on the offense that's seeing the most uh, harm from graduation. Christian Jones, Rasul Ugalo Masuli, and Bayo Kaniki, three starters are gone. Joseph Borjan announced yesterday that he is coming back for one last season, which is great news. He was the starting right tackle this year. He was a starting left tackle last year until he got injured on the first half of the season. Um, First half of the first game of the season and missed the rest of the season. Having him back, he gets to play with his little brother as well. His little brother is a will be a true freshman next year. So at least 1 year they'll be on the roster together. Borjan could move back to left tackle now that Christian Jones has departed. He could stay at right tackle. It kind of depends on who they bring in, but I would think he moves to left tackle just because um, that they thought well enough of him at that position to start him at left tackle 2 years ago, and now he's a year removed from his knee surgery, so I think there's a little bit more strength there. I think Sean Lewis said preseason where having him on the right side took a little bit more pressure off of his injured foot, and now I think after a year, maybe that's strong enough and healed enough where he can move back to left. Kalen Ellis he had a great year as a left guard. You would think that he returns, or you would hope that he returns if you're San Diego State, um, to give a second returning starter on the offensive line. Dallas Fincher, he was going to be the starting right guard until his hip injury, freak kind of accident at the end of fall camp. Um, he could get a medical red shirt and come back for another year. If he's healthy. That's the other thing is he healthy enough to want to come back? If he does, I think he could probably slide into that Biokaniki's right guard spot that he was destined for anyway. Um, in that sense. And then you kind of have a few other guys, young guys. Mason Baker well, I think he was the Yeti, 380-pound guy. You see how his development, strength and development has been this year. And then you had Michael Lavelle Watkins as well. He was from redshirt freshman from Washington. He was a backup center, but didn't really play. I think played early on and that was injured for most of the last part of the season. So he wasn't dressed. Um, because I think they need to find a replacement at center for Ross because you saw how important it was to have an experienced, good center kind of directing the offensive line and how much better they were this season than last with pre-snap penalties, formational penalties. It still kind of snuck up on them towards the end of the season, but it was much improved from last season. I think that has a lot to do with Ross at center. So, do they think Michael Lavelle Watkins is the guy to step up? Um, some other guys on that team that had four true freshmen um, that played some snaps last year. Iqbal, Kasim, and Chase Duarte. They used up their redshirt. They played more than 4 games. So you gotta believe the staff has confidence in them. And then you have Ashton Netzrak and DeLong Craft Jr., who also played some games, although they did not burn their red shirts. Some of them played center. Dallas Fincher played center. I think 2 or 3 years ago. So I don't know if moving him back to center is the smart thing, especially since it's been so long, coming off of an injury where he didn't play in a year. So we'll see. The staff will have to evaluate that. You also have Cam May, who is going to be a senior, who was kind of a backup this year, didn't really play a ton. Um, could step in as well to maybe the right tackle position if Borjan moves to left. So a lot there. I think that Mike Schmidt can work with. Um, and we'll see what they do. But the offensive line, out of any offensive unit position group, the offensive line definitely has the biggest holes with people departing, and that's just something that they're going to have to fix, either from within, development from within, or transfer porter. Moving on to defense. Defensive line, um, Malachi Finau, who is a transfer from Hawaii, came in and kind of became the best defensive tackle along with Sam Benjamin this year. Benjamin obviously is graduated, but Finau just announced as well himself yesterday that he's coming back for one more year, which is I think a big boost. Um, you also have Krishna Clay and Amari Comier, who were kind of the backup defensive tackles, who played a lot of snaps, who I think should help as well. Um, it's Cody Cornelius. He was kind of going back and forth between tight end and defensive tackle. I don't know where he honestly ended up position wise, but maybe this is an opportunity for him at defensive tackle. Sidney Dupai and Kainoa Davis were young guys who played sparingly. We'll see what they do, but I do think they probably need to go out and get a big experienced defensive tackle to kind of replace what Sam Benjamin did, plugging up holes. And, Sam Benjamin had a big turnaround from his first season at San Diego State to his second, and was a big part of why their defense got so much better. Um, and I think they need to bring in another defensive tackle, experienced guy from the portal, um, to kind of supplement and complement this group because I think they 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 have decent pieces, but I think they do need one more here. Um, to solidify the unit. Edge, I would say 3 weeks ago, if you asked me what position was going to be the strongest for San Diego State next year, considering eligibility, I would have said the edges. Everyone but Niles King was eligible to come back for one more year, and it looked like a strong group. But then you've got Salvati and Batty announcing their intention to enter the portal, and now those guys were fifth and sixth out of the six players. But those guys came in the cheetah package, which was when they used four edge guys on the line in third and in passing down situations, mostly third and longs. And those guys were very productive in their limited pass rushing snaps. And I think it's a loss to lose them. Ryan Henderson, Brady Nasser. I mean, I think those guys, Ryan Henderson especially came on late. Brady Nasser had a good, decent season. You hope they come back, but I think the biggest wild card now with Rob Arch leaving is Trey White, all conference first team player 2 years in a row. If you'd have asked me a couple days ago, I would have said he's definitely coming back. He's a local San Diegan. He had opportunities to leave the last 2 years and didn't. So why would he leave now? Um, but with Rob Arch departure, um, and who knows what kind of money is out there in transfer portal for someone like him playing a coveted position. Um, I don't know. I don't know anymore if I'm as sure based on some conversations I had recently. I still think he stays, but I'm not so sure anymore. Um, he has to weigh um, the money, the offers that would come his way, and there's some life-changing money out there for one year of playing football that'd be hard for anybody to pass up. Um, and he's also probably trying to talk to NFL scouts to see what they think of him and his NFL future. Um, you could, similar to, basketball players who are being told that they need to play in higher competition to see what they could do against power guys, and I don't know what the NFL scouts would be telling him and his family, um, but Trey's gonna weigh that himself, and so we'll see. We know he's a local San Diegan and he loves San Diego, and we're I think that's the biggest domino right now in terms of coming and going. Um, well, one of the two, in terms of who's could potentially transfer out for San Diego State. And I think it's really going to make or break this edge position because if Trey White comes back, you've got Ryan Henderson, Brady Nasser. They're obviously going to need to go out and get some guys in the portal, kind of like what they did with Nas King, with Jared Batty, with August Salvati the last 2 years. They're going to have to add to this unit. But if you got White, Henderson, and Nasser coming back, I think you're set up there for success. Um, Linebacker, I mentioned one of two people. The other guy I think that is probably the other big domino for this team is Owen Chambliss. He's obviously turned himself into an all-conference first team player. Had a phenomenal season. Was probably the best player. Well, Chris Johnson and Chambliss, but Chambliss was everywhere from making tackles, making sacks, TFLs, covering in covering in zones. He just had a really good year, and he's a Southern California kid. He's not a San Diego kid, so I don't know how much of staying in San Diego allures or plays to him like it would maybe to a Trey White. But you would think that offers are coming his way, heavy offers are coming his way, and so he has a decision to make, especially with Rob Arch leaving his position coach. Um, Yeah, I mean, I think they lost a lot of their depth here at linebacker. DJ Herman, Brady Anderson, and Mr. Williams. Those were kind of their three of their top five linebackers this year. And with Tana Latuli's injury, they were three of their top four. And so not having that depth, if you lose Chambliss as well, I think is a major blow to this defense. Tana Latuli should be back. He's also a San Diego kid. I don't think he's going anywhere. Um, so he should be back, hopefully, if he's healthy. If you have Latuli and Chambliss and one of these young guys kind of step up, you could have a good linebacking crew. I do think they need more experience, even if Latuli and Chambliss return, because everyone else is a sophomore or a redshirt freshman with basically no playing experience. Um, so yeah, they're going to need to add depth and experience at the position, but I think a Chambliss staying or going is gonna be obviously the make or break of this positional group right now. Cornerback, this is the position on defense and maybe the entire roster that needs some major transfer portal infusion. Losing Chris Johnson, Bryce Phillips obviously is huge. You're also losing Xavier Hamlet, who would got a scholarship this year. Deshaun McEwen, who played some corner when Chris Johnson was out. Eric Butler, who played some corner, just for depth purposes because of kind of how much youth they had behind Johnson and Phillips, which tells me that the staff didn't have a ton of faith in guys like Prince Williams and Isaiah Buxton. But they're gonna need those guys if they return are gonna need to step up. Jelani Whitmore was injured. He got injured in fall camp and missed the season. He was gonna be kind of the main backup corner to either of Johnson or Phillips before his injury. You have Braylon Caldwell, who was a true freshman this year, who redshirted. So just looking at the corners that are coming back, it's a lot of youth and a lot of inexperience, which is why they're going to probably need at least one, if not two, starting caliber corners in the transfer portal, um, moving to aid this defense. And I think it's funny. if out of all the years that Demetrius Sumler as a cornerbacks coach would be needed, would be this year with so much youth and so many new guys entering the fray. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't know if he's going to be able to keep that role to that full, capability while still also being defensive coordinator. So that's why they may need to get a cornerbacks coach that's focused solely on cornerbacks, considering the youth and experience that are at those positions. Or they bring in experienced guys, they're going to be brand new to the system. And then last but not least, safety. They've got a lot of guys. You're losing Eric Butler and Deshaun McEwen, but you've got a lot of guys returning. Sean Staley, Max Garrison, Josiah Cox, Dwayne McDougal, Josh Hunter, so Jelani McLaughlin, Hunter Haynes. Those are all guys who played some snaps last year who are coming back. It's a lot of guys. Um, right. Dwayne McDougal, he came here for Rob Arch because he played for him in Idaho. Um, I think a lot of people thought maybe he would leave and go with Rob Arch to Nebraska, but that's a big step up in competition from Mountain West to Big Ten. He may decide to go just to be kind of another coach on the field, helping the players out with Rob Arch's system. But to say that he's gonna go to Nebraska and be a starting safety, I don't know if that would be the case. So I do think maybe he returns here, or if he does move on, he moves on somewhere else, not Nebraska. But I do think they need some help, reinforcements here as well. Sean Staley is the number one returner. He was an honorable mention, all conference player, but at times he struggled this year. He was a guy that took a lot of bad angles, running in from the safety spot, trying to tackle running backs, tackle wide receivers. Um, and so I do think the loss of Eric Butler is going to be immense. Who's going to play that corner nickel position that's going to kind of shut out slot receivers? Eric Butler, um, you barely heard about slot receivers burning San Diego State this year, and I think a lot of that is because of Eric Butler. Does Josiah Cox step into that role and take that over? Does he move back into more of a traditional free or strong safety role? Um, I don't know. I think they're gonna need some of these guys. You're probably gonna see transfer out because there's so many scholarship guys at this position. But I think even regardless, if everyone returns, you're probably gonna need one new starter um, at this position um, from the transfer portal. Someone experienced um, that can supplement and do what Demetrius Sumler's defense wants to do. Now, that's the other thing we haven't really talked about is how much is Demetrius Sumler's defense going to be similar to Rob Arch's defense, and how much is it going to be different? And do these players fit that? Whether it's safety, corner, linebacker, edge, defensive tackle, you also need guys that fit what the defensive coordinator wants to do and what plays he's going to call. So that also has to factor into this. We haven't really heard Demetrius Sumler talk about this is what my defense is going to look like and how it's going to be different. But I think those are discussions that he's having internally with the staff, with the players, and whoever they're recruiting in the transfer portal. Um, so yeah, interesting stuff. It's going to be an interesting off season, as every off season is these days. I didn't really get into special teams. I think just quickly, Hunter Green had a great season as punter. He'll be back. Obviously, they need to replace Gabriel Placencia. Nick Clegg has been on the roster the last 2 years. Uh, you could see them giving him the shot at spring to win the position. I'm sure they'll bring in some either high school guys or JUCO guys to compete with him as walk-ons. And I think the way that they've taken it the last 2 years is whoever wins that position ends up getting a scholarship. So we'll see how that plays out, but I don't know. we'll know more, I think, in the spring of who's going to win that competition. But I think it's fair to say Hunter Green is going to be the punter next year as well. All right, that's my overall take on where the roster sits right now. I mean, by the time this episode comes out, you might have had some of these guys I mentioned that could come back that aren't coming back. So a lot can change, but let me know what you guys think. Comment, send me a DM. Um, Let me know what you guys think about who's coming back, who should be leaving, who should they target. I will probably have an article out after the bowl game about, top five wish lists or needs from the transfer portal. So look out for that maybe next week before the transfer portal opens. But otherwise, I want to wish you guys all a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. Thank you guys for listening. It was another great season um, of just for me to cover San Diego State, and I appreciate you guys always for tuning in. And we'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your host, Andre Hagperdian.